Rob Portman's role in the Ukraine controversy, and the governor puts his gun plan before lawmakers. Joining us on Columbus on the Record this week, Jesse Balmert, State House reporter for the Cincinnati Enquirer, Joe Ingles, State House reporter for Ohio Public Radio, Gene Krebs, former state legislator, and Joseph Moss of the Ohio Hispanic Coalition. U.S. Senator Rob Portman finds himself at least on the edges of the impeachment controversy. Portman is co-chair of the Congressional Ukraine Caucus, and in September, before President Trump's now infamous conversation with Ukrainian President Zelensky, Portman was lobbying hard for the release of the then frozen aid to Ukraine. He sent out a series of tweets saying the military aid was vital to fend off Russia, and he urged the administration to release the money already authorized by Congress. President Trump this week said it was Portman who played a key role in getting him to release the money. Portman claims Trump told him he was holding up the money to get other European countries to do more. Portman did not mention requests for a Biden investigation. Jesse Balmert, Rob Portman was kind of upset in a Rob Portman kind of way that the aid was being held up, but he still is sticking with the president and saying there was no quid pro quo.
Yeah, there's not a real fervor to Rob Portman's upset level, but yeah, as a person who is, like you said, co-chair of the Ukraine committee, he wanted this military aid money to be going to the Ukraine. And when he had a conversation with people, various levels of government, and eventually with the president, he was told that it was being held up because they wanted a better deal from the European countries, for European countries to be putting more money into military aid for the Ukraine. Now, the whistleblower report is saying that in the conversation between the Ukrainian president and President Trump, that Trump asked for him to do an investigation into Democratic presidential challenger Joe Biden. So essentially, Portman is saying he didn't learn about the Biden allegations until everyone else did.
He heard the first half of the call. That was what Trump told him.
But they still didn't get the story straight, because originally the president said that the reason he was holding it up was because he was concerned about corruption in Ukraine. And apparently the story is fluid.
Rob Portman also wrote a letter in 2016 with Sherrod Brown. It was a bipartisan letter from members of Congress urging Ukraine to get rid of this prosecutor who's the subject of this whole thing, much like Joe Biden was pushing for. So it's really kind of complicated, Gene.
Yes, it is very complicated. And I'm waiting for some way to come up with a 16-foot wide flow chart to help everybody understand it. This is, how do I put this? This is becoming something that everybody is trying to parse through. But the question is can people step back from their preconceived ideas of what Trump did or what anything the Democrats say, everything the Republicans say, and be able to look at this in a manner that is able to actually for themselves begin to understand it. That's what I find disturbing about this thing, is that everybody's looking at this, and it's just like, remember on the internet a while back, they had this thing that if you saw, they had a pair of tennis shoes and you see either green or gray or pink or whatever, everybody's looking at this issue from that perspective. It's not helpful for the democracy to do that.
And Joe, it's pretty right down party lines. Republicans see the letter, the transcript of that phone call very differently than even Rob Portman and Steve Stivers, Mike DeWine, pretty moderate mainstream Republicans.
Right, and independents, quite frankly, they're still kind of looking at the whole situation thinking, I don't know what's going on here. And I think you're absolutely right, Gene. I think people look at it from the lens of the politics that they most identify with. But I think, right now we're starting to see every day there's something new coming out on this. And so as more and more comes out, I think that's when we'll start to maybe see people actually looking at the facts a little bit more and less at the political spin.
The polls are starting to turn a little bit nationally. 51% of Americans now favor at least an impeachment inquiry. If you look at Ohio voters in a recent poll by Emerson Polling, 47% of Ohioans support actual impeachment, 43% oppose impeaching the president, and 10% are unsure. Jesse, how do you make out those numbers? It's divided, of course, but that's a pretty high number for impeaching the president of the United States.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll find out a lot more, and to the Democrats' political benefit, this is going to play out over the next several months while we're all working on the 2020 presidential race, which I'm sure is, at least a factor in this. But I think as we find out more information, hopefully we'll all have a better idea of it. But I imagine those impeachment numbers break down about what they did before this situation with the Ukraine came out. But I do think the Ukrainian letter, this phone call, this whistleblower is something that is easier to understand for the average person than the entire Russian saga. And so I think that's at least one reason why Democrats are moving forward on this impeachment inquiry, because it is something that people can grasp.
To kind of put it into perspective, for good and for bad, about 2 weeks before President Nixon's resignation, the support for impeachment, or at least proceeding with impeachment, was 44%. But 2 days after the election, or I should say 2 days after Donald Trump got sworn in, support for impeachment was at 40%. So the numbers move, but they don't move that much.
What's the feeling out? Gene, you live outside the Columbus bubble. What's the feeling out there in far western Ohio?
Basically, first of all, Trump had, in order for him to achieve re-election in 2020, he had to keep what I call the NPR GOP. It's not much of them, maybe 20-25% of the population totally. These are people who, instead of listening to Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity on the radio, listen to NPR. Okay.
Which we appreciate.
Yeah,
we do.
But he has to win in order to win. He has to keep them. What this has done is has solidified their unease towards him. But the 80% of the GOP, or in my neck of the woods, the 90% of the GOP that's always firmly backed him, they're backing him just as hard. And I have to be careful because I like playing with both the D's and the R's where I live, and throwing out little things to see how they respond to it. Like putting red ants and black ants in jars, shaking them up, see if they fight. And it's interesting because I'll bring up things like, is it really appropriate for Hunter Biden to have done all the stuff he done? And they go off into Trump, how evil Trump is. And I go up, one of the things with the media that you're not doing, I hate to criticize you all because you do buy print by the truckload, as they say. But, when Trump said, I have a favor, I want to ask you a favor, you leave off the word though. Yep. And the word though has you add that word to that phrase, and I bring this up to my Republican friends back home, and they all go, oh, no, I didn't say that.
Well,
it's right here.
the minority leader of the House didn't at first on 60 Minutes last week.
I know.
McCarthy said they added the word.
And I brought up about Trump being, Trump throwing Pence under a bus. This was all news to them.
Yeah.
I had to show them the video. People don't want. They've made up their minds.
They
don't
watch
want, they don't,
certain channels and
They don't want. They don't want. And so this is why I'm very much afraid for how if we go through this, and if any new facts come out that vindicate Trump or completely incinerate him, people aren't going to pay any attention to this. Yeah.
I think one thing, Mike, that we need to be very careful of right now, and especially with this Emerson poll, it has some problems with it because they looked at younger voters, and there were some Democrats and some things. But the thing we have to remember is we are a year out.
It's a poll.
And,
Let's get to that poll. The poll that we mentioned also shows President Trump is underwater in Ohio, at least right now. First, Democrats have to pick a candidate, and Ohio Democrats, like the three frontrunners, Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, and Elizabeth Warren, are basically tied. Biden stands at 29%, Bernie Sanders at 27%, Elizabeth Warren at 21%, but not that far behind given the margin of error. In hypothetical matchups, all three, Biden, Sanders, and Warren, would beat the president by about 5 points. Remember that Trump won Ohio by 8 points last time around. Gene, as Joe mentioned, there is some sampling issues with this poll. Younger voters may have been sampled a little bit more than older voters percentage-wise. It's registered voters, not likely voters. And we're a year and a month away. Still, what does it tell you about Trump's strength in Ohio?
He still has a fair amount of support. I think, though, if I was sitting there as an elected Republican official, here's my fear. And this is a theme you hear me refer to on today's show, is we all have glass ceilings. And the Republican office holder has to be careful. Here's the box they're in. If they actually say anything accurate but unkind about Trump, they will completely, lose their base. At the same time, if they don't begin to make efforts, at what point in time to begin to separate themselves from Trump, if stuff continues to come out, they will put a permanent glass ceiling. You want an example of a glass ceiling is the Celeste tax increase of the early 80s. We used that to completely squash any political career of any Democrat serving the General Assembly at that point in time. And so the question, they all know this, and the questions going through their head is, will this permanently kill my ability?
Trump's been in Ohio, Joe, for, a couple of times, at least once a month over the past 3 months, I believe. So he's looking at these polls.
He's looking at these polls, and I think the Democrats, you're seeing them here too. They're coming in, and they'll all be here this coming week, for the debate. But the thing is that they're coming into Ohio, but again, it's a long time before now and then, and we've got a lot of things that can happen with this impeachment process, and there are things that could spin the other way that could look pretty bad on the Democrats.
And I got to tell you, I think that if it's Sanders, if it's Warren, if it's Biden, I think Trump has a decent chance of winning. The only candidate that I see on the D side who could really give him fits is Mayor Pete from Fort Wayne.
Joe, do you agree with that?
I disagree. However, I do like Mayor Pete, and I think it'd be great to have him as a candidate. But at the same time, I think he's extraordinarily smart. But I think at the same time, I agree that the polling is accurate if the vote were to be held today, and I think that they would defeat Trump.
Here's how this game seems to work, though. We tend to swing from the pendulum swings from one type of president to the extreme of the other. Okay, and so who is the most opposite person in the Democratic field to Trump? And it is Buttigieg, or however you say his name.
Buttigieg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's one problem with him.
Yeah, but there's one problem with him. But that's why, if the voters decide to swing to something completely opposite, look what they did from Obama.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
They
I
chose Trump.
think the problem with looking back at history, and I respect your knowledge thereof, is that you can't always look at it. I think that each time is a little bit different, Gene. Now, one thing that I found really interesting in looking inside this same poll is how are the Democrats supporting those three candidates? Because who's supporting Biden, versus it's totally different. The 18 to 29-year-olds versus the folks my age that tend to support Biden. So I think that as a party operative, I would want to look at who is going to come out and vote no matter what, and who needs to be inspired. But at the end of the day, the party doesn't pick the candidates.
Jesse, Joe Biden is seen as the most, in conventional wisdom anyway, that Joe Biden will be the most Ohio-like candidate to face Trump. He is the one who has a 6 or 7 point lead over Trump head-to-head in this poll.
Yeah, I think the three names on that list tell you those are the three names with the most name recognition that people have heard of, that have been in the news. And so I am kind of surprised that all three of them are so close stacked up when they have such different policies and positions on things like healthcare or, just how we address taxes in the states. So it'll be interesting as people get to know these people beyond their past personas. No, I think both Republicans and Democrats would agree that Joe Biden could do well here. I think Bernie Sanders showed a lot of enthusiasm the last time he ran through Ohio. The number of people who attended some of his rallies was, sometimes rivaled Donald Trump in some instances. So I think those are two people who it's not surprising that they're on the list.
Tim Ryan, who spoke to us this week, said that he is in the presidential campaign until the end. Of course, unless he's the nominee or he wins the presidency. He decides when the end is, right?
He has that right to do so, but he's not going to be on the debate stage in Ohio. You remember how critical that was for John Kasich to make the debate stage in Cleveland when the GOP ticket was running here in 2016. So I'm not sure what Tim Ryan's end game is with this to build statewide name recognition. I don't know.
Well, here's the thing about Tim. His seat is now on the bubble. If Republicans had come up with a good candidate last time, they would have mounted one against them, and they could have perhaps have beaten him. He knows that. He also knows that. How do I want to put this? As long as Tim wants to run for Congress in Youngstown, the Republicans have been happy to let him do so. But there are some things in his background that will destroy him if he runs statewide. And the same thing for national. That's why his goal is not to serve again in Congress. His goal is to get some position somewhere. He's going to announce his endorsement for the likely nominee at some point in time and hope being made undersecretary of something.
All right, unless it goes into overtime, there are just 2 weeks left on the preemptive campaign over the nuclear bailout law repeal. Opponents to the bailout have until October 21st to collect the 265,000 signatures they need to put a repeal on the ballot. Both sides are running TV ads urging people to sign or not to sign the petition. The pro-bailout side has come up with another trick. It is urging people who have already signed the petition to remove their names. State law actually allows for this. And a group tied to the owner of the nuke plants helpfully provides a form for people to fill out and send to the Secretary of State's office to remove their name. Jesse Balmert, this is a reach. How many people are going to say, I signed it last week, but now I'm having second thoughts. I need to fill out this form. I'm going to put my name here, put it in the mail, or email it to the Secretary of State's office?
I mean, I don't know if you've seen a campaign quite like this one in Ohio, even before it's on the ballot. So, you have several groups that are working against this effort to put House Bill 6 up for referendum, essentially money for subsidies for 2 nuclear plants up in northern Ohio, but also some money for some coal plants and a few solar plants. And they would also be restricting renewable energy and energy efficiency. So you could have a debate on whether this is a good piece of legislation, whether it helps Ohio's energy grid. But what we're really having a debate over right now is, should you sign a signature? Can you be assaulted while you're trying to sign a signature? Can you take your signature off? It's just getting to be a bit of a clown car.
Yeah, it is.
Every member of the General Assembly, if they're smart, are right now who voted for House Bill 6 are fervently praying for the petition to work, and that then First Energy, pulls the plug on the plants and all that, and then it becomes moot and everything. Because, go back to glass ceilings, everybody who voted yes on House Bill 6, especially if this petition comes out and the advertising for this comes out, for what, all of this, subsidy for the big corporate interest comes out, they have a really thick glass ceiling above them at that point in time, and none of them will be able to run statewide. Their best hope, actually, is to have it right now, petitions get filed, the nuke plants go down politically, and then boom, then they're slightly off the hook.
But let's put it this way. I think it's a hard thing for the anti-bailout side to be able to get these petitions, enough of them, by the time they need to get it. But if they do, the pro-bailout side has kind of shot themselves in a foot, because they've put themselves in a position where they've actually made a 30-second commercial for the other side. I mean, can you imagine? It's going to be, okay, well, these people didn't want you to have this and they didn't want you to have that. Now you can stick it to them. Vote here, And I can see it right now in my head.
Yeah.
And what's the deal with the people that are following the petition?
Petition blockers.
Petition
Well, basically, if you're asking someone to sign a petition, they're standing next to you saying, well, would you consider this, in a perfect world, would you consider not signing it because this is our argument?
So they're having a debate on the street.
But some of the debates have gotten
heated,
a little physical
and
on occasion.
touchy-feely.
And consider who's having that debate. I mean, you're talking
petition
about
signatures
paid
gatherers.
petition signature gatherers, and they're not exactly the people who have the most knowledge about the issue to actually debate it.
So is this the future of politics?
Yes,
on the street?
We'll see
yes,
if it
it is for the
works.
next 10 years.
If it works,
we're going through our version of the 1850s.
If it works, people will try it again. Monday, Governor DeWine is set to put his 17-point plan for gun safety formally before lawmakers. DeWine will unveil legislation. His original plan called for tougher background checks, a red flag law, and more mental health services. House Democrats demand the Republican leadership to hold hearings on another slate of bills they say will help reduce gun violence in mass shootings.
This is not an issue we just started taking up and one that we just started talking to the Speaker and other members of House leadership about. So we are hopeful that we will have these hearings. And again, as we said before, the good ideas can rise to the top and we can start to implement some good common sense gun safety legislation here in Ohio.
Joe, if you're a betting man, what are the odds the tougher gun regs get to become law?
Yeah, but I'm not hearing anything tough in these proposals. This is one case
Well,
that I think that is very watered down.
If you're an ardent gun rights supporter, you don't like the red flag law.
Well,
you don't like the universal
I don't
background
think,
checks.
as a matter of fact, I've come to believe that none of these things are ever going to pass, at least not in the next 10 years, like Gene says. But if you look at the proposals, they're very similar to the governor's proposals, as far as the red flag type of thing. The Democrats would like to be able to have a hearing, an ex parte hearing, without anybody being there, you know, and the difference between one and the other, in my opinion, as a lawyer, I don't think is that much.
Here's your core problem. It has to do with our primary system, which is why in the book, Bridges
Yeah.
Across Every Divide, we call for ranked choice voting. And it's because for the Republicans, you have to be perfect on the Second Amendment or to pass through the primary. On the Democrat side, you have to be for gun control to pass through a primary. The problem is that both sides know what the other sides are doing. So the Republican primary voters will not trust anybody who says, I'm going to compromise with my Democrat colleagues. Well, wait a minute. No, you can't because you let them in. And so you need to restructure the debate. You have to blow it all up.
Do we expect Governor DeWine legislation to be any different than his proposal that he unveiled in the summertime?
I think I'm being told it might be one bill, which could be interesting if it's all kind of pulled together. And so if it'll sink or swim together, that could be interesting. I think people see some things as easier to pass than others, things like fixing the background check system by adding more types of things that need to be submitted or making it easier for county clerk courts to submit that information.
I want to get to vaping, Gene, because that's also a big hot topic. It's fuming down at the State House. Governor DeWine is asking lawmakers to ban the sale of flavored e-cigarette products in Ohio. The call comes amid reports of lung injuries and deaths linked to vaping. The governor maintains flavored e-cigarettes are a tool to hook kids on nicotine.
Now, we do know that, and I've cited the CDC alerts and all the other concerns that people should have about vaping, but our focus it will remain on children. Our focus will remain on young people. That's where I think that we have a moral obligation. I think it's the responsible thing for us to do.
The vaping industry and its supporters had their say this week as well. 200 rallied at the State House in support of flavored vaping products. They say they're safer than cigarettes and they help people kick the habit of smoking. Joe Ingles, we know how the governor feels. We know how health officials feel. We know how those the pro-vaping folks feel. How do lawmakers feel?
Well, lawmakers are kind of split on this. You know, some of the lawmakers think, yes, we need to crack down on this. The state has to have, more regulation over this, maybe even ban the flavored cigarettes. There's a couple of bills that do that. But, by and large, they're all over the place on this. There's not a consensus by any means. What is a consensus, seems to be a consensus, is the more of the education part of it. We see the Department of Health, there's already $3.3 million being put into prevention. And, those kind of efforts seem to be more popular. But there will be a debate on this, and it's going to be heated.
I'm going to predict that something will pass to be restrictive because the white-collar world simply does not smoke anymore. They do not do that. And the General Assembly, who do they associate with? Other folks in the white-collar world. They don't know any smokers. And this is just another case of bringing out the class divisions that are increasingly common but unspoken of in Ohio. And I think you'll see something pass because it won't affect the people who I associate with.
I just got back from Massachusetts, and last week they banned the flavored
banned them all.
vapes.
Temporarily, didn't they ban them all temporarily for 4 months, or is it just flavored ones?
You know, the discussion that I heard on the radio was flavored, but you may be right. I know that you keep close tabs on what's going on there, and I believe it was done by executive order, which is something that Mike DeWine decided not to do.
All right, let's get to our final off-the-record parting shots. Joe, you're up first.
Okay, well, you know.
Joe Moss is up first.
Joe Moss is up
Oh,
first. That too,
excuse
Joe.
me.
Confusing.
Yes, thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. Now, this week marks the second anniversary of asylum petitioner Edith Espinal entering sanctuary at Columbus Mennonite Church. Edith had the option of avoiding deportation by just living in the shadows like so many people in the undocumented community, but she decided to do this bravely by offering herself as a symbol of resistance to unfair immigration practices, allowing the greater community and political leaders to rally around her cause.
Gene.
So last time I was on, I said that there'd be an interim budget. They wouldn't sign it. I was right. This time, 2 weeks after the governor signed the real budget, now people went, this won't work. We need about a 6% reduction in revenue next year because the recession's already begun in Indiana and it's creeping our way.
All right. Joe, now you're up.
Okay. Last month, the Secretary of State did the voter removal. Some voters have been removed, and we know that the registration deadline is Monday. So everyone should go on the Secretary of State's website if you have any question. If you haven't voted in the last 2 or 3 elections, get on there and check your name to make sure it's there.
And Jesse.
This week, the Ohio House of Representatives passed a measure that would allow you to have alcoholic ice cream delivered to your door. So that could be coming to a DoorDash near you.
You stole my off-the-record comment. Irony alert. No flavored vaping, but alcoholic ice cream delivered to your door and available in grocery stores. Kids do not like ice cream, so this will work. Anyway, Columbus on the Record for this week. That's it. Check us out online, Facebook, Twitter, and our website, WOSU.org. Have a good week.